Washington Post poll finds that 2/3 of us are angry at the government and dissatisfied with both Republicans and Democrats. Surprise, surprise. Does Washington need a management reboot? Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, Yale School of Management, Bill George at Harvard Business School, and our own John Harwood in D.C. Welcome to all of you. Mr. George, let me begin by asking you, do you basically think that the system, the government system, the way it is operating is broken beyond repair?
Well, I don't know if it's beyond repair. I met a number of people at Davos a couple weeks ago. They're very concerned about that. We just seem to be so polarized that it's almost impossible to get real problems solved at the national level. And I think we're focusing on way too many problems. We have a massive job crisis in this country, and I think that's where we need to put our energies and focus. But this split between Republicans and Democrats is going nowhere, and I think the president needs to bring people together in the center, as President Clinton did a decade and a half ago.
Mr. George, there's also the issue of instability and whether or not that is creating uncertainty on the global stage, if you will. And, you know, we pulled some quotes from Tom Friedman's column just a short while ago. He also was in Davos. Maybe you guys ran into each other. But here's one of the things that he said. He said political instability was a phrase normally reserved for countries like Russia or Iran or Honduras. But now an American businessman here remarked to me, people ask me about political instability in the U.S. We are becoming unpredictable to the world, and we are making people nervous. What are the ramifications of that on a global basis? And do you agree with that?
Well, first of all, I heard a lot of that in Davos from CEOs, from bankers, and from political leaders around the world, that there is that real concern that we don't know where the U.S. is going. And I think we need clear leadership in Washington to say, here's where we're going, here's where we're focusing on. We're not focusing on 10 things, we're focusing on one. Now, a year ago, President Obama inherited a mess, and I recall being on this show just exactly a year ago, concerned that we weren't focusing on jobs. But he did stabilize the banking system, he did get the economy moving again, but now with 25 million Americans looking for full-time jobs, we've got a problem, but I think the rest of the world needs to go know where America is going.
Let's go inside the Beltway. I want to ask John Harwood about something. John, I got to tell you, I think this talk of instability is simply wrong. What we have and what we're seeing is democracy. I mean, that kind of debate is part of what our government is entirely about.
Well, that's true. And look, the way our system has evolved in recent years, Dennis, is the parties have moved toward each poll. The center, as many people think of it, is a bit of a no man's land at the moment. But I think what we do have is a moment with President Obama. He was elected with a solid mandate from the people. He got a majority of the vote. He had strong majorities in the House and Senate. And we have a test right now as to whether Democrats, in fact, can govern. We don't know the answer to that test. They may still pass comprehensive health reform, financial regulation reform, and some sort of an energy bill. So I think the uncertainty talk is a little bit of like nervous Nelly stuff from people who are impatient to watch the democratic process in action. Okay. But I do think with the Republicans having had 8 years under President Bush, having not achieved most of their goals, now we have a moment to find out whether Democrats can do that, and that's what we're going to find out over the next year.
I have to, Dennis, you have a question for the panel?
Yeah, let's go to Jeff Sonnenfeld. You know, we titled this segment, Does Government in Washington Need to Reboot? Jeff, do you think that Washington realizes that people outside of Washington think they need to reboot?
No, I think to them this is business as usual, and there is an insulated view there. I agree with you completely on the tone of that question, Dennis, and thanks for not asking me about the T-bill market. Now, what I do worry about, though, is it was a year ago that I was on with Bill George, and Bill and I had some disagreements. We did agree about the need for focus in the administration. That's a lost opportunity. But the righteousness and the ideology that's on both sides of the aisle, especially some of the Republican intransigence right now, it is a little horrifying. When you see guys like the underwear bomber, Abdullah Muhalab, who is apparently talking and giving us all, authorities tell us he's giving us what we need to know, and we're seeing this saber rattling that U.S. is weak, or we're seeing Representative Ryan or Bachmann saying we, need to get rid of these, major social programs, such as, Medicare and Social Security, leading confusion in their own party. The Democrats aren't capitalizing on that, but somehow trying to placate an awful lot of wild ideology. Sam Rayburn once said when he was leading the Senate that any jackass can knock down a barn, but it takes a carpenter to build one. And we need people that are willing to start to be carpenters and build.
All right,
leadership in the Senate.
I'm sorry,
Jeff,
I'm sorry to
Jeff,
step on you. Mr. George, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. George.
I agree with what you're saying, Jeff, and I think John Harwood, democracy is messy, but it requires compromise. It requires compromise on both sides. The Democrats have to come to the party, not just try to hive off one Republican senator, but come to the center. And I think the president's got to lead that, and I hope and pray the Republicans will come there, because what's happening, the American people I talk to out here in the Midwest, where I'm in Minneapolis today, are losing confidence that the politicians can get it done, and they think they're more about themselves than they really are about solving the nation's problems.
Isn't the bigger issue, though, that the world seems to be losing confidence? I mean, the implications of that, if the Chinese decide not to buy our debt, we just had a failed auction. This is the second one that didn't go well this week. You know, there are a lot of other places where they might be able to put their money, maybe not with as much safety, but what are the implications of that?
We need those.
Look, let me just make a point on that, Sue. That is that the fundamental cause of discontent around the world, as well as here, is the state of the economy. It's not about our political process. And until we see some recovery in the economy, recovery in jobs, you're going to have that. And I would say, by the way, it is not true that the Obama administration has not focused on jobs. You can argue about their solutions, but they did implement the financial stability plan, the stimulus package, and all of the things the president's doing on health, energy, and financial regulation, he sees as part of an effort to build a stronger foundation for the economy. That is about jobs, and the question is whether it's going to work, and also whether his own Democratic Party is going to give him that program.
Mr. George,
exactly right.
Let me jump in. I want to get one last question for Mr. George before we go, and it is this. I know that you believe that the president should have some business people in his inner circle advising him, and that he does not at this point. I wonder if you think that he has spent too much time banging on the banks, specifically banker bonuses, and in light of the bonus that Mr. Blankfein, the chairman of a company that you serve on its board, just took, do you think that that banging on the bankers caused Mr. Blankfein to take less money than he otherwise would have?
Well, let me say, I think Goldman Sachs, the board, the management, very conscious of the public upset and the concerns, and the fact that the government was there for Goldman and every other bank in the fall of 2008, and I think showed considerable restraints. But beyond that, I talked to a lot of business people in different businesses, small business, large business. They're afraid to hire now because they don't know where the president is. He'll listen to them, but then they come out and hammer at them the next day. And so I see a lot of people not hiring or, frankly, moving jobs overseas because they're too uncertain about all these things that John Harwood's talking about, health care and everything else, what their costs are going to be,
Tyler,
what their added taxes are going to be.
I want to add one point on that. There is a general incoherence to the upset, both internationally and domestically, that we can't ignore, and it's one reason why you can't take it too seriously. For example, there are significant parts of the world that are upset with the United States because we're not moving faster to cap carbon emissions as part of an energy plan, as the rest of the world is doing. So, and there are also in big parts of Europe that want us to go further on going after banks, right? So you can sort of throw it all together in the stew and say people are angry about everything, but it doesn't necessarily produce any particular prescription like, oh, well, then they need to do this, or they need to stop criticizing the banks, or they need to drop the energy policy. It's all over the place until the economy recovers.
All right, John.
But John, the first job of as a leader, people have to follow him, and you have to give them clear vision. At Medtronic, I had to give people a clear vision.
He's on the 5-yard line on health care reform. We'll see if they can deliver.
Yeah, the hard part is he's being beaten by sloganeering. There is gradual progress being made, but the hard part here is he's relying on some of the distance, and it's almost a Michael Dukakis style of charisma. He's got to get past that.
Our business, by the way, is part of that. The constant, like, crazy yelling, sniping on cable television is part of that.
But he can also speak in more human, direct, empathic terms.
There will be no sniping on my show, gentlemen. On that note, we thank you both very much, because we're going to continue this discussion in a slightly